Oh, yeah, old friend. He's referring to Tyr. Tyr lost his hand. When they bound Fenrir, when the gods bound Fenrir, Fenrir said that you can bind me, but to make sure you're not tricking me, I need one of you to put your hand in my mouth. Maybe that's what's happening now.
You may take my hand if I am untrue.
So they're going to, this is exactly the myth that I was just talking about. He's putting his hand in his mouth as sort of a show of faith. Odin. All right. So we have Odin, the All-Father here, head god, head of the pantheon. He's the All-Father, father of Thor, god of wisdom, god of war, god of poetry, god of all kinds of different things. And we have him here fighting, unknown warrior of some kind.
Stand and face me, you feeble-down thrall!
Calling him thrall, which is essentially means slave in Old Norse and also Viking Age society. It's a social class. Obviously used as an insult here. Not sure who he's fighting, but whoever it is didn't come out of the battle well. Some kind of a Viking warrior, apparently, of some kind.
Leave me now. Nothing.
So Odin is really central to Norse mythology. He is known as the All-Father. He came about toward the beginning of the world, and he helped sort of set everything into order in the world. So Odin he's a one-eyed god. He's a god of wisdom. He sacrifices himself kind of constantly for knowledge, especially knowledge about the end of the world and how the world's going to end. Asgard is the realm of the gods, and it's one of the 9 realms in the cosmos. We have what looks to be the world tree behind Asgard here. And the world tree is Yggdrasil. The 9 realms it's sort of central to. Thor is the son of Odin, so who's the All-Father, the main god, sort of the equivalent to Zeus in Norse mythology. So Thor is the son of Odin and a giantess named Earth. And so he is kind of the everyday person's god, known for having his hammer Mjolnir. He's a god of thunder. His main job in mythology is protecting the gods and humans as well from the Jötnar, which are often translated to giants. And he's sort of the god of the everyday person. He's clearly super popular. Historically, we know from a lot of different casts, as well as actual surviving Thor's hammers, as well as casts for Thor's hammers, that was sort of a talisman for him. And a lot of people were named Thor something. So there were male and female names that began with Thor. Thor Stain for a man, for example. Thor Björk for a woman. So he was really popular. He interacted most with humans out of all the gods. Then we also have Tyr. Tyr is a god of kind of thought to be, he's described by Snorri Sturluson, who wrote the Prose Edda, kind of one of our main sources for Norse mythology, as being this kind of god of justice. And he's the one-handed god because he got his hand bitten off by one of Loki's 3 monstrous children, Fenrir the wolf, when they were trying to bind him. He is said to not be a very peaceful god. And it's possible that in earlier times, Tyr was sort of the head god, not Odin, but that's something different. And Freya is a goddess of fertility. Freya is one of a tribe of gods known as the Vanir, who were at war with the other tribe of gods, the Aesir, at the beginning of time. She's a goddess of love and fertility. She's also a Valkyrie, these women who ride above the battlefield and choose the slain who are going to go to Odin's hall of Valhalla, or to her hall of Folkvanger, and prepare for the end of the world. So she is known for also her falcon shape and having a chariot drawn by cats. We don't have a lot of, detailed descriptions of what Asgard looked like. Okay, we're at Heimdall's tower. Heimdall's the watchman god. He is the god who sits at the end of the Rainbow Bridge. He kind of watches over everything, and he's going to let the gods know if anything, like the giants, for example, are going to be approaching, as he does at the end of the world, by sounding his horn. And he's known for having this really good sight and hearing, which makes him an ideal person for being a watchman.
Who crushed the skull of Thrymr, king of the Jötnar?
Thrym is so Thrym is one of the giants that we know of from some of the poetry. There's a poem about Thrym. Odin kind of engages in like a riddle contest with Thrym.
We are fighting for a whole...
There's Freya. She has her special necklace that was Brisingamen, that was made by the dwarves. A lot of these gods have like special treasures that were made by the dwarves, who are kind of both friends and foes of the gods. And they often make special stuff for them, like her necklace and also like Thor's hammer.
Warriors from Jotunheim. They attack from all fronts.
Looks like they're talking about warriors coming from Jotunheim, which is the realm of the giants, one of the other realms, and that being a threat of some kind.
Havi, lend me a score of your warriors and I will lead them into Jotunheim myself.
So Thor leading them into Jotunheim, that's something that would make sense because he, like I said, his main job is to defend against giants. There's not actually a ton about Tyr in the mythology. I mean, he plays this role in helping bind Fenrir the wolf, but he's said to be a war god, so having him as part of this operation makes sense. There's something kind of Greco-Roman about this.
Well said, Raven Feeder.
So Jotunheim is another one of the realms, the realm of the Jötnar, or often translated to giants. It's unclear, like if they were actually meant to be, giants in the way that we think of giants, or whether they were just another race within the mythology. So we have the gods and the humans and then the Jötnar, and they have this antagonistic relationship with the gods.
Your great cauldron, stolen by Hymir's sons.
And yeah, this is all referencing some mythology, the cauldron and Hymir, and these are all myths that are attested in a couple of different sources. We have the Prose Edda and the Poetic Edda that are kind of our main sources for what we do know about pre-Christian belief among the Norse people in Scandinavia. So Suttung is known for has the mead of poetry associated with him. He guards that, and Odin goes and gets the mead of poetry by tricking his daughter Gunlod, who they're referring to here. The mead of poetry, that anybody who drinks of it becomes a really talented poet, and poetry was what Odin was the god of. He's in charge of retrieving this within the mythology. And what actually happens with Gunlod is actually pretty horrifying within the mythology itself. Maybe we don't know a lot about him, but he's associated with wisdom, and so consulting with Mimir for advice would make a lot of sense.
Not yet.
To drink the mead, your Hugr will take flight. Okay, your kind of spirit will take flight and be ever fixed. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. And okay, we have the head of Mimir here. And within the mythology, Odin carries around Mimir's head and consults it for wisdom. And here it's somehow, I guess, within the tree. The well of Mimir is under one of the roots of the world tree. And Odin gave his eye to the well of Mimir for wisdom.
It requires the sacred waters of Mimir's well to ferment.
Okay, so we have the mead being magical here. And really the mead is associated with poetry and being a good poet. Fuse them with the blood of the Aesir. Yeah, so we have Mimir giving advice. I think this must be Mimir's well, which again is in the mythology in the realm of the giants. So he's really got like an oracle that's being consulted in this game. Your spirit will live on here. Your soul, who good. So they're integrating some Old Norse. Old Norse is not the language of the Vikings. It was the language of medieval Norway and Iceland. And it's the written language that the myths and the sagas and everything like that are written down in. It's kind of a later form of the language that would have been spoken during the Viking Age. It's not really, Viking language per se.
How much would you sacrifice to be freed of fate?
Angerboda, that is... Her name literally means sorrow bringer, and she is, in the mythology, an ogress, and she is the mother of Loki's. The three children who are destined to bring this death and destruction to the world. So we have the Midgard serpent, which maybe I'm not sure what that is. Is that Odin's eye, potentially, in Mimir's well? Because Odin gave his eye to Mimir's well for wisdom. I don't know what it is. Potentially. That's what that's supposed to be. Yeah, and that's why Odin has only one eye, because he gave his eye to the well of Mimir for wisdom. Okay, so what we see here is this Vegvisir. It's post-medieval. It's a post-medieval stave, like a magical Icelandic stave. And you see them all over the place, like in Iceland. And I think even the singer Björk has a tattoo of this. But it's not medieval. It's not a rune. It's a magical stave that are in some post-medieval sources. So, and I think that this is the Vegvisir. I'm not an expert in those specifically, but it definitely is a stave and not a rune that we're seeing here. But I'm pretty sure it's the Vegvisir, which means wayfinder. Oftentimes, it kind of gets lumped together with the Viking Age and with runes of the runic alphabet, which was used in Scandinavia before the Latin alphabet was adopted. And then we have some actual runes here. Futhark, which is the runic alphabet. kind of a serpentine pattern, which is well known from a lot of inscriptions and picture stones and rune stones.
Whosoever drinks of the mead.
Okay, so the mead is something very different in this game than it is in the mythology, and not very different, but it's more than just something that makes someone a good poet.
They will hunt me now to the edges of the 9 worlds.
9 worlds. So there are these 9 realms within Norse mythology that we know of that are all part of kind of at the center of which is the world tree.
Voice. 6 times we tried to blunt the fangs of Ragnarok.
Referring here to Ragnarok, which is the doom of the gods or the judgment of the gods, or the end of the world. It's apocalypse in Norse mythology.
He made his own sacrifice for knowledge.
Okay, sacrifice for knowledge too. That's something you see a lot, especially with Odin. Odin sacrifices himself constantly for knowledge throughout the mythology, whether it's like his safety or he actually like wagers his life, or in some other ones he allows himself to be set on fire. He does all of these things in the pursuit of knowledge. So that's really central to the mythology. Fenrir is one of Loki's 3 monstrous children. He gets bound by the gods, and he is still supposed to be big. I'm not sure if he's supposed to be this big, but he's supposed to be quite, big and scary. Yeah, old friend. He's referring to Tyr. Tyr lost his hand. When they bound Fenrir, when the gods bound Fenrir, Fenrir said that you can bind me, but to make sure you're not tricking me, I need one of you to put your hand in my mouth. Tyr was the only one brave enough to do that. Maybe that's what's happening now. I'm not sure. But in any case, that's how Tyr loses his hand, because they obviously trick him. And he bites off Tyr's hand.
Son of Loki, have I not treated you with kindness?
He has both of his hands, so this must not have happened yet. It must be what's happening now, is where he loses his hand to Tyr and becomes the one-handed god. They face off as part of the apocalypse, as part of Ragnarok. Yeah, here we go. Take my hand.
You may take my hand if I am untrue.
Yep. Okay. Beautiful northern lights in the background there. Not an uncommon sight. So they're going to, this is exactly the myth that I was just talking about. He's putting his hand in his mouth as sort of a show of faith. Here we have Fenrir realizing, you're tricking me, you're actually tricking me, and he's going to bite off Tyr's hand. That's what's going to happen. And but Tyr, according to mythology, was the only one who was brave enough to do this as a show of faith. So that's how they bind Fenrir, and that's how Tyr loses his hand and becomes the one-handed god. And he'll stay bound like this until Ragnarok begins, at which point his bindings are going to loosen and he'll break free, and then faces off with Odin, actually. Okay, he faces off with Odin at the end. That's an inconsistency in the mythology.
Here you stay, Fen Dweller!
All right, this was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I really enjoyed watching this gameplay. Find me on TikTok, the Low-Key Professor. If you want to check out more Gamology, you can find us on Facebook or on YouTube. So see you next time.